What's up, you absolute legends? Now, I want you to know, since the last episode, I've taken in your feedback. No more flip-flops. I'm gonna do this whole episode in my bright orange basketball boots. Safety first. So in the last episode, we found this to be bent, which pretty much set the whole build back by at least a week and a half. So we have a solution, and here it is. Straight from our friends at Iconic Motorcycles in California. Now we had a couple of options. We could have gone with a full CNC racing top triple and lower triple. That would have been pretty cool, but it probably would have cost me a bit of money. This, on the other hand, only cost me 140 American dollars. Now I know what you're saying, is it bent, just like the last one? I don't think so. Let's test it. So here's the old one. You can clearly see that it's bent because it's closer at the top than it is at the bottom. And there's the new one, and you can tell that it's straight. It's exactly the same at the top as it is at the bottom. And as an added bonus, even though I've already bought these from Ducati, it comes with all of the exact bolts that I need, and it's still got the steering stops in place as well. But enough talk, let's get this in place. So I'm gonna use the bearings that I had previously, slide the bearings onto the shaft, and then slide the shaft up into the existing steering stock. So now that that's torqued down, I can actually put my top triple on. I'm just gonna gently tap this into place with a soft hammer. And before I go tightening up these bolts, I'm gonna start sliding my forks up into the actual slots. Now that my forks are in place, I can tighten off the triples. And there you have it. It looks cool, but it doesn't work. So we've got a small issue. We're pretty used to having small issues on this channel, so let me show you what it is. So I think the hub of the Super Sport wheel is actually slightly narrower. So you can see that these spaces are just too small. They just don't fit because I'm guessing the forks on a Super Sport fit closer together. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna measure from this point to this point, and I'm gonna measure this wheel from this outer point here to this outer point here. And then I'm gonna jump over to my V4, which has the same front wheel as a V2, and I'm gonna measure the thickness of the hub. And then I'm gonna remove one calculation from the other, and that should give me a difference, which if I divide it by 2, I then get the size spaces that I need. But that's not the only problem, because I need to get those spaces made. I need to get them machined. Again, not a huge problem, pretty quick job for someone that's good with a lathe. The next problem is I actually need to space these discs out, otherwise the gap between here and here is going to be too far. Like if you look, if I just put that on, you can see that there's a distance there where the bolt hole doesn't line up. So, a couple of things I need to do. Get the spacers to bring these out. So put 5 bolt holes around each disc. I need to space those discs out. That's easy. That's probably just washers. And then I need to get these spacers made there and there. No one ever said building custom bikes was easy, but that's okay because I've got forks on a bike and I've got the bike technically on wheels. So I could put weight on it now. I don't know if I will, but at least I can go to the next stage, which is trying to see if this bike is straight. Right, it's all torqued down. For the first time in a long time, the bike doesn't need a center stand, a center jack under it. So massive milestone, even if the front is not perfect. We can worry about that later. So I think what I'll do next is I'm going to grab the controls, the bars, the clip-ons, everything to try and get the front of this bike built up. I might even get the guard on there just so I can get a look for it. And then I'm going to mark up the bike for the center line. So I'm going to use a felt pen, like a paint pen. And I'm going to mark up the center line down the bike. So various points, get a bit of light there, various points on the bike to give me a center line so that we can use our laser measure to see if it's straight. So first up, let's get these bars on. I'm just going to start with the clip-on attachment by itself first, and then I'm going to worry about the bars, because I think the first time I did them, I actually got the bars around the wrong way. Okay, so you're probably wondering why would I put the front guard on? I just really wanted to see how it looks, and I've got to be honest, it looks sensational. Even the two different tones of gold look amazing. So let's recap where we're at. I've got a front wheel off a 950S Super Sport, which is too narrow. I've got a V4 sitting over here, which is the exact same front wheel configuration as a V2 should be. So what I've done is I've gone to my friend's place who has a 950S Super Sport, and I've taken a whole bunch of measurements to the millimeter perfect. I think within about half a millimeter of the distances in the front wheel between the calipers, between the discs, and the overall hub width, and that minus the exact same measurements off my V4 will give me the difference, which I'll split by 2, which will give me the additional spacer size I need for each side. And then I've got to go and get that spacer size made on a lathe, because I don't want to run 2 spacers each side because there'll be friction. And I've got to get them added essentially to new spacers for each side of the bike. So it's not going to be a super quick process, but it's not overly technical. So I'm not going to go into too much drama about it. I'm just going to take those measurements and get it done. But if you run into those problems with doing wheel conversions, that's all you've got to do. You've just got to work out the differences, get some spacers made up on a lathe by someone who can actually do metal lathing work, and just continue forward. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip this front down a little bit, and then we're going to set up the laser. Okay, I got my laser set up, and I'm just going to turn it on and just show you what I'm going to try and achieve. Now, this is not perfect science, but it's going to be pretty close. So, just going to line that up on the line that I drew on that front frame. It's got to be perfect. Here we go. Okay, so that's my first point, is this point just here. I don't know if you can see my laser. I don't know if you can see that. You can see it on my hand. Maybe, there you go, you can see it on my hand. And then I've got another point just here, which is this bolt hole right here, which will be dead center in the middle of the lower triple. And then I've got another reference point, which is the center of this bolt hole here. I've got another reference point, which is the midline of the top nut. I can't really count on much else until I line up the back here. So I might have to strip this down a little bit to get to the rear frame. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these straps on each side to tilt the bike and get the bike actually level. So using my level, get the bike level, and then I should be able to line up this laser perfectly, and we shouldn't see any variance front to back. So there's 2 axes. There's this axis here, which is from this point to this point that we're measuring. It has to be straight, in a straight line, so whether or not the bike has twisted at all. And then there's the vertical axis down the front, which is we're measuring from this point here, crossing through this point here, this point here, this point here, and then we should have an equal distance between the forks of where the laser line sits. And that will tell us whether or not the bike is actually twisted that way in the crash. So you could have had two axes of damage where it's gone that way in terms of the length of the bike, or it's gone that way in terms of being hit across the front. So lots of fiddling around to do. I won't be able to have the camera going all the time, so I'm just gonna do my best and I'll try and film the end result. And just quickly, I have another point of reference, which is my level on the laser. So multiple points of reference. Oh yeah, so sorry for my camera work, it's gonna be a bit dodge, but I've got it to a point where I've got everything straight on this axis, so this one, but I'm just out by about 3 or 4 mil at the back. So I'm just wondering if I need to sort of move the back of the bike and then just check and make sure it's actually upright again. So the beauty of doing a single laser line, oops, I just bumped my laser, I gotta start again. The beauty of doing a single laser line is that I can set up a single laser and it gives me 2 axes in one. So I think that's probably a more accurate way of doing it. You guys let me know if you think there's a better way. So, third time, I've got this line and the back line completely straight, but you can see I'm off by like 2 or 3 millimeters here, which means at the base of the front tire, I'm probably off by like 1 centimeter. So that would be twisted. But I'm also thinking I've got this strap too tight on this side. So I need to get the bike straight up. I think I need to move the bike that way and then that way and then try again. Okay, I think I've got it. I think I'm bang on. So I'm gonna turn the lights off now so you can see my lasers. Okay, now you can see my laser line. Dead smack straight, bang in the middle. I've got it going perfectly through this center point of the hole, straight up, hitting this point here, hitting the midpoint of this, all the way back, and hitting the midpoint of there. Although I just put my camera through it, you can see the midpoint of that right there. So, I'll turn another light off just so you can see more. There you go. That's better. Look at that. And my laser is also dead even. Okay, so I need to take a moment to think about this. And you guys can validate if I'm right or I'm wrong, but my hypothesis is one single laser line joining 3 points across 2 axes. If all 3 points touch on the same laser line, then both axes are straight and equal to each other. Is that correct? I think that's correct. That's what I'm going with. Yeah, let me know in the comments. But I think this bike is straight. So all we're gonna do now is put it back together. I've got a bunch of work to do on the switchgear and putting the controls back together. I've got to go and pick up some new brakes. Got to get these spacers made for the wheels, which I won't get done today, but I am going to do a mock-up of the bike in this episode as well, even though it's not the final fairing. The final fairing is something very special that's coming just for this bike. And I think with the frame, we can probably make the assumption that it's straight now, and I can go ahead and organize a welder to come over and just tack weld that little crack in the side. I'll probably do that off camera, but yeah, let's get this bike built up. First mock-up. So just quickly before I reveal how the first mock-up looks and we roll this bike out in the sunshine, there's a couple of things I want to show you for updates. Our steering damper, our Öhlins steering damper, $700 at least new plus postage. I've managed to pick up all the parts, including the rod, the seal kits, C-ring kits I think they're called, everything for $112. That's on its way. I've still got to mount these, the Rizoma reservoirs I've got. These are the large ones, but there's not much room in that cockpit, so I'm going to have to remake these brackets. And then I also need to straighten this exhaust. I think I've got it too tight through this back section here. I need to loosen it all off, straighten it, and tighten it back up, because at the moment it's a little bit wonky. But let's get this bike outside and start it up. Before I absolutely piss off my neighbors. How awesome is that? We'll see you on the next one.